I'm Tim, and this is George here at the Emerald Coast Indoor Shooting and Sport. This is the first part of a two-part discussion on suppressors. In this first part, we'll discuss factors you should consider when purchasing a suppressor, and then in the second part, we'll talk about the process to buying a suppressor. George, before we start our discussion, can you clear up some confusing terminology? What's a silencer and what is a suppressor?
So basically, silencer and suppressor are nearly the same thing. The biggest thing about the name is sort of a misconception in media, general society, what a suppressor does and what a silencer is. This is a suppressor. And basically, what happens is as a bullet is fired, the cartridge comes out of the end, gas travels behind it, and is encapsulated within the actual suppressor. Reason why they call it a silencer is because movies tend to think that firing a bullet through a suppressor makes it whisper quiet, almost to a point where you cannot hear it. This is not wrong. However, it does not happen as movies tend to make it. Basically, what happens is, depending on the bullet travel speed, it can either be quiet or it can still be loud, just a little bit more tame.
Why do some people call them cans?
So that is just a nickname for suppressors.
Okay, so you've briefly explained how they work in that, but a little deeper, are there different kinds of operation for a suppressor?
Yeah, so there's different types of suppressors. As you can see, we have different variations of a caliber as well as what their uses are for. Some suppressors you'll find they are more rugged. They are made for duty use, is what they would call it. Others are more for sporting. So you'll have different suppressors that are made of different materials, lighter, heavier, more durable, less durable. Some do better with noise reduction than other ones. However, that all depends on what your use is, as well as what they are designed for.
So you mentioned noise reduction, and I know when I go to buy hearing protection, I always look at what's the rating of decibels that they'll reduce the sound. How does that work with a suppressor?
So the problem with decibel ratings is there's no standard for decibel ratings. So I could go out with my own chronographer into an inside range like this and do my own test. However, going outside, that's going to show a bunch of different data, and going to another person's range where they may have rubber walls that help mitigate noise, that's going to show different data. And then I go outside when it's raining, you're going to have a bunch of different factors. So unfortunately, when it comes to decibel ratings, everything that you see online is going to be a general term. Usually it's done by a third party contractor hired by a company, but it's all variable depending on where they shoot, when they shoot, what they shoot, etc.
So really the only valid way to compare those decibel ratings are fired out of the same gun in the same conditions on the same day. And then I could compare A and B. But typically that doesn't occur. So it's not always valid to put one against the other and say this will be quieter than the other.
Correct, yes. Yeah,
So,
trying to compare different suppressors in terms of like off of sheet data is a little hard to do when, as you're talking about, just so many factors come into play. And as you shoot, most people know that the barrel will heat up, different carbon buildup is going to happen, especially inside a suppressor. A used suppressor is going to have better noise reduction on a data sheet just because there is a larger carbon buildup. But a cleaner suppressor is going to have a lesser noise reduction because it is brand new. It's nice and clean.
so other than noise reduction, what are the major advantages of a suppressor?
So the major advantages of a suppressor is going to be that you're actually able to help dial in your groups whenever you're shooting. So because the way a suppressor works is that it retains the gases, there's a lot of increase in muzzle velocity because there's extra energy when the bullet travels out of the suppressor. The other thing that is going to help out with suppressors is that in terms of noise reduction, you're going to be able to talk to one another on the range, which is a very, very convenient to do, right? You know, I'm trying to talk to my spotter, trying to talk to somebody trying to help me out, maybe an instructor or something like that. As well as when you go back home, having a firearm that is subsonic is going to make sure that you don't hurt yourself in case you may need it or anything like that.
I think that'd be great because you're not going to be as fatigued either, I imagine, from dealing with all that. So I know that I could use whatever helped me improve my accuracy anyway, so I'll take every tool I can get. So I know when I go to the store and I want to buy a pair of shoes, I have to consider, where am I wearing these shoes? What am I doing with them? Are they work shoes? Are they athletic shoes? Are they church shoes? What about buying a suppressor? I'm sure there's things like that I need to consider.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is about, like you said, what are you trying to use it for? So you're going to have different suppressors that are a little bit more rigid than the others, like this Dead Air Sandman right here. It's very heavy, but very rigid. You're not going to break it. Then you have other cans that may be made out of like aluminum titanium, very lightweight. However, they do not have the rigidity, and they even warn against shooting it at high temperatures is what they call it. Basically, trying to shoot like more than a magazine of 5.56 because it can cause it to heat up and wear out the baffles exponentially faster than normal. So if you're trying, so it all depends really on what you're trying to use. And that really comes into, do I have one platform that I want to shoot it on? Do I want to do multiple platforms? What is my intended purpose and where I am going to be using it?
So one size does not necessarily fit all, but one size could fit many.
Yes, so there's suppressors that are like this one, the Soundseco 36M, which has a large bore. So it's a 9 millimeter bore that can shoot all the way up to 338 Lapua, 350 Legend, and all the way down to, I believe it's just 223 and 5.56. But it'll work with anything in between there, including 308, 300 Blackout. So it's a good does it all, but not necessarily does everything well. When you'll see cans that are dedicated to other calibers, say like a dedicated 5.56, may have better signature reduction or noise reduction because it is dedicated for that caliber.
So the caliber, meaning the size of the bullet, as you mentioned, the bore, the hole size that comes through there, is that the only thing I got to concern myself with as far as what rounds, cartridges I can shoot, or is there some other factors?
No, so there's other factors as well. So the biggest thing about with multi-caliber suppressors is they usually have a quick detach or some type of mounting method. So with this one, the Soundseco 36M, they have their own proprietary system of mounting called the ASR mount. And basically what happens is I have to have a muzzle device that has that ASR thread pitch, and I can turn a locking mechanism, spin the suppressor, I'm able to take it off super simply. And I can throw it on different platforms that, as long as I have that thread pitch or that mounting device.
So if I buy a 45 suppressor, I can shoot it with my 44 Magnum, my 10 millimeter, all those others?
No, so even though a bullet may be smaller than the actual bore, the pressure is what you want to make sure that it is rated for. Because we've had instances where some people don't know exactly what their suppressor is rated for. They have it one in a 45 caliber, shooting a 10 millimeter out of it. 10 millimeter is technically smaller than a 45 caliber, but as the bullet traveled out of the suppressor, along came it with the baffles and caused permanent damage to the suppressor, where we had to send it back in and get it repaired and then get it back to the customer.
Okay, so I got to consider whether I want to use it on multiple guns or one gun, how I'm going to fix it to that gun, right?
Right.
And then the pressure and the calibers.
Correct.
Is that it?
No, I think there's the biggest thing really that I think comes to most people's mind is what's the price point?
Yeah, okay, that's fair. And I guess if I'm buying one made out of steel versus titanium, that's going to change that price.
Oh yes.
What about handguns and suppressors. I heard you need a piston or something to go with it.
Yes, yeah. So they either call it a piston or a booster, but basically what happens is that it's almost like an extension for the suppressor itself, where it can sit on the back and allows it more gas to be retained to help the slide reciprocate. That way you don't get stovepipes, malfunctions, etc.
Okay, so some pistols require them, some don't, depending on the suppressor. But it's possible to use the same suppressor on a handgun as a rifle.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So I guess there's more to this than a lot of people think. I just pick the color, the shape, the size, and screw it on the end, right? I mean, just screwing it on the end, I got to figure out what my thread diameter is and whether I want to quick change this between multiple guns or just have one dedicated to a particular gun.
Right.
Well, thank you for your time today and helping to make a very technical subject understandable. Folks, please look for our other video on the process of purchasing a silencer. If you have any questions, stop by at the range. George is one of our experts on this subject and we'll be glad to help you out. Thank you and hope to see you soon.